Hi, everyone. My name is Srinivas, and I'm from small town Iowa. When I say that, usually it's met with a look of surprise, sometimes shock, and not infrequently words of incredulousness. But it's true. My name is Srinivas, and I'm from small town Iowa. I left after high school to pursue college, grad school, my medical training, and as soon as I was done with my medical training, I came right back home, back to the community where I felt like I could truly make a difference. To my friends on the East Coast, moving back to a place that had no Trader Joe's or Uber available 24/7 was probably the most fearless thing I could have ever done. But to me, it was my calling. I wanted to go back to the community that had raised me, that had given me so much. And so I came back home and I started seeing patients, and I continued my research in rural health equity issues. And then the pandemic hit. To give you all some background, I'm an infectious disease physician who's also an epidemiologist. My focus is specifically on translating my research findings into health policy to improve public health. In other words, my last 20 years of work and training were preparing me for this pandemic. And so I couldn't sit on the sidelines. I knew that I had to step up, and this is how I could help my community, to advocate with leaders, not from a partisan standpoint, not from a political standpoint, from a purely objective, scientific, medical standpoint, to help them make the right decisions so we could prevent loss of life. I started to advocate within my community for people to make the right decisions on a personal level, educating people so that way they would know what they needed to in order to make the right decisions in their everyday lives. What I didn't expect was what happened next. After 2 months of advocating and educating, I started to have a lot of trolls following me online. And then those trolls turned into some community leaders calling me, contacting me personally, trying to tell me that I needed to silence myself because they didn't want transparency in the public for fear that it would stoke more fear. And then it turned into doxing. For those who are not familiar with doxing, it's publicly sharing somebody's private residential address in hopes of causing them harm. The doxing came with messages like, take a gun to her house and make sure she's legal. Then the doxing turned into direct death threats. But none of this stopped me. None of this worried me because I knew that what I was doing was making a difference and it was needed. It wasn't until July they suddenly started to rethink this. In the middle of July, I was sitting on a virtual meeting with the American Medical Association. We were planning the big launch of our National Mask Up campaign. And I started getting frantic phone calls from my parents. I didn't pick up, and then those calls turned into texts, urgent texts that seemed scared. So I stepped out of my meeting and I called them back immediately. My parents made me put them on FaceTime, show them all around my place, make sure I was alone, that I was home, that I was safe. And only then did they tell me what had happened. Someone had spoofed my phone number, meaning that they had made it look like they were calling from my personal cell phone, and called my dad's unlisted cell phone number, pretending that they had already hurt me and that they were driving 70 miles to Ames to come and kill my parents next. That was the first time I took pause, because this was no longer just directed at me. It was now targeting the people I loved, the people I cared about. But to my parents' credit, the first thing they said to me after they verified I was safe was, "Don't you dare stop. What you're doing is important and it's needed." That to me was fearlessness. Watching them and their response, watching them embody those values my entire life, teaching me that being fearless is standing up for knowing what you know is right, regardless of the obstacles that come your way. For every naysayer out there, there are at least 10 people who silently watch and learn, and I've noticed personally, even change their behaviors. based on what I'm sharing and what I'm doing. And to me, that's important because it's those people that I can help if I ignore the negativity. One time when I was discussing this COVID issues with a local journalist, he shared with me a story that to this day, I don't think he realizes how much it still maintains an internal motivation for myself. He told me that his father lives in rural Iowa and that his employers were about to force him to go back to work to a very crowded facility. They ended up listening to one of my panels, and after my panel, went back to his father and said, "We've learned that this is unsafe. We want you to continue to work from home, and we don't want to put you in danger." That journalist told me that his father's immunocompromised, and he thinks that if it hadn't been for that panel, his father wouldn't be with us today. It's stories like that that remind me why I do the work I do, why we each do the work we do, why we need to continue to focus on the positive, because the differences we are making, they're going to last forever.